The morning sun spread its light across the small town. Birds were flying above and a cool breeze touched the trees. In a little house at the end of a narrow street lived a boy named Amir and his dog Bruno. Amir was only 12 years old, but in his heart, Bruno was more than just a pet. He was a best friend, a brother, and a secret keeper. Bruno was a strong dog with soft brown fur and bright eyes that seemed to shine like stars at night. Every time Amir looked into those eyes, he felt comfort and joy. From the moment Bruno had entered the house as a little puppy, Amir had promised to always take care of him. And in return, Bruno gave all his love and loyalty. Every morning before school, Amir would run to the backyard where Bruno waited with his tail wagging fast. The boy would throw a small ball across the grass, and Bruno would run after it with speed and excitement. Sometimes the dog would not return the ball at once. He would playfully hold it in his mouth and run in circles, making Amir laugh until his stomach hurt. Their laughter often filled the neighborhood, and people passing by would smile at the happy sound. In the evenings when Amir returned from school, Bruno was always at the gate. The moment Amir opened the gate, Bruno jumped, barked, and ran around him. The dog's joy was so pure that even on difficult school days, Amir forgot his worries the moment he saw Bruno's tail wagging. Together they would walk through the town, pass the bakery with the smell of fresh bread, and walk to the park. There they would play until the sky turned orange and the stars slowly appeared. Amir often talked to Bruno as if the dog understood every word. "You are my best friend," Amir would whisper while holding Bruno's soft ears. "I will never leave you." Bruno would answer with a gentle bark and a lick on Amir's hand, as if saying, I will never leave you too. At night, when the world became quiet, Bruno would sleep near Amir's bed. The boy felt safe knowing his loyal friend was close. Many times Amir dreamed about adventures with Bruno. In those dreams they traveled across mountains, crossed rivers, and discovered hidden lands. But even without dreams, their life together was already full of adventure. One summer evening, Amir's father came home from work and smiled at the sight of the boy and the dog. "You take care of him very well," the father said. "He is part of this family." Amir nodded proudly. He knew his father was right. For him, Bruno was not just part of the family. Bruno was the heart of it. The bond between the boy and his dog grew stronger each day. Their love did not need words. It was seen in every wag of Bruno's tail, in every smile on Amir's face, in every step they took together. The whole town knew about them. Shopkeepers, neighbors, and even children in the park would say, "Look, Amir and Bruno are here." The pair had become a picture of pure friendship. But life does not always move the way people hope. The same sun that shines can also hide behind clouds. The same road that brings joy can sometimes bring sorrow. Amir never imagined that one day his promise to never leave Bruno would be tested in the hardest way. One afternoon, Amir and Bruno walked to the park as usual. The park was full of children, families, and the sound of laughter. Amir threw the ball farther than usual. Bruno ran after it with speed. The ball rolled near the open gate of the park, and Bruno chased it out onto the street. A sudden car came rushing down the road, and the noise of its horn made Bruno panic. In fear, he ran further away instead of returning. "Bruno!" Amir shouted with all his strength. He ran after the dog, but the busy street was full of people, bicycles, and cars. Bruno's brown fur disappeared into the crowd. Amir kept calling, "Bruno, come back!" His voice broke and his eyes filled with tears. But Bruno did not return. The boy searched every corner of the street. He asked shopkeepers, strangers, and children if they had seen a brown dog running. Some nodded and pointed in a direction, but when Amir followed, Bruno was no longer there. Hours passed and the sun went down. Still, there was no sign of Bruno. That night was the first night Amir slept without his dog beside him. He kept the window open, hoping to hear Bruno's bark. He placed the ball near his bed, wishing Bruno would return and grab it with his mouth. But the night passed in silence. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly became months. Amir never stopped searching. He walked through markets, empty lots, and lonely streets. He called Bruno's name until his voice became weak. Sometimes he thought he saw Bruno in the distance, but when he ran closer, it was always another dog. People in the town began to say, "Maybe Bruno is gone." But Amir refused to believe it. He held on to hope as tightly as he held on to Bruno's old collar. He placed food outside the house every night, praying that his dog would smell it and return. He prayed before sleeping, asking for just one chance to see his best friend again. Amir's father tried to comfort him. "Dogs are strong," he said. "Maybe Bruno found another home. Maybe he is safe." But Amir's heart refused to let go. He knew Bruno loved him too much to simply leave. Deep inside, Amir believed that his dog was still out there somewhere, missing him in the same way. Years began to move forward, slow but unstoppable. Amir grew older. His school days changed into new responsibilities. But the empty space in his heart never closed. Every time he saw another dog in the street, he remembered Bruno's shining eyes. Every time he heard a bark in the distance, his heart raced with hope. The bond they once shared was too strong to be broken by distance or time. Even after 6 long years, Amir still carried the memory of Bruno in every corner of his soul. The laughter, the walks, the promises, all lived in his heart like a story waiting for its ending. And somewhere far away, Bruno lived his own story, carrying the memory of a boy who once whispered to him, "You are my best friend. I will never leave you." The first night away from Amir was the hardest for Bruno. He had never slept outside the safety of the small house, or without the warmth of Amir's voice. The city felt strange, filled with unfamiliar smells, loud horns and shadows that moved without kindness. Bruno curled up under an old bench near the road. The hard ground felt cold against his body. He shivered but closed his eyes, waiting for morning. When the sun rose, Bruno began to wander. His nose led him through alleys and markets. He smelled bread from the bakery, meat from the butcher's shop, and the dust of the roads. Everywhere he went, he hoped to find Amir. He barked at boys playing in the street, but none of them were his boy. He chased after the sound of voices, but none of them called his name. Bruno walked until his paws grew sore. Sometimes kind strangers threw pieces of food at him, and he ate quickly. Other times he had to search trash bins, pulling out small pieces of bread or bones. Hunger became his daily companion. Yet even with an empty stomach, his heart stayed full of the memory of Amir. He remembered the ball they played with, the long walks in the park, and the gentle hands that scratched behind his ears. As days passed into weeks, Bruno learned how to live in the streets. He joined small groups of stray dogs, but he never stayed with them long. Most of the dogs fought for food and barked at one another, but Bruno was different. His heart longed for peace, not for fights. He often walked away, sitting alone by the riverside, staring at his reflection. In the reflection, he saw the same brown eyes, but behind them was sadness. One rainy evening, Bruno found shelter under a wooden cart. The water dripped down and thunder rolled across the sky. Bruno shook his wet fur and lay down. He dreamed of Amir again. In the dream, Amir came running through the rain, holding a small umbrella. "Bruno, I found you," the boy shouted with joy. Bruno wagged his tail and jumped into his arms. But when he woke up, the street was empty. Only the rain remained. Time moved forward, and Bruno grew older. His once soft fur now carried dust and scratches. His paws grew rough and his body thinner. Yet in his eyes, the hope of seeing Amir again still shone. Every time he saw a boy with dark hair, his heart beat faster. He ran forward only to realize it was not Amir. The disappointment cut deep, but still, he refused to forget. One winter morning, Bruno followed the smell of soup from a small shop. A kind woman stood outside with a bowl in her hand. She looked at Bruno with gentle eyes and placed the bowl on the ground. "Eat, poor dog," she said softly. Bruno stepped forward carefully, sniffed, and then ate. The warmth of the food spread through his body. He wagged his tail in thanks. The woman smiled, and for a moment, Bruno felt the warmth of family again. He stayed near that shop for many days, and the woman often gave him leftovers. But no matter how kind she was, Bruno never stopped searching. His heart told him that somewhere Amir was waiting. The years rolled like waves in the ocean. Bruno's life became a journey of streets, markets, and open fields. He saw children grow older, new buildings rise, and seasons change again and again. Many people forgot him after just a glance, but he remembered every small kindness. Still, his most important memory never faded. The voice of Amir calling to Bruno, "Come back." One summer afternoon, Bruno wandered near a school playground. The sound of children playing made his ears rise. He walked closer and saw a boy throw a ball. The ball rolled near Bruno. Without thinking, Bruno picked it up in his mouth. The children laughed and clapped. For a moment, he felt like a puppy again. But when he looked around, he did not see Amir. His tail slowed down and he dropped the ball. The children tried to call him, but Bruno walked away slowly. He could not play with others the same way he played with his boy. Another year passed. Bruno's steps grew heavier, but his spirit stayed strong. He often returned to the park where he had last seen Amir. The park had changed. The benches were painted new colors and new trees had grown taller. But Bruno remembered the exact spot where Amir had thrown the ball. He would sit there for hours watching the gate, hoping that his boy would appear. People in the park noticed him. Some threw food, some ignored him, and some chased him away. But Bruno always returned the next day. One evening, a young man stopped near Bruno. He bent down and touched his fur gently. "You look like you are waiting for someone," the man whispered. Bruno looked up with hopeful eyes. The man sighed and walked away, leaving Bruno with the same silence. Yes, he was waiting for someone. For 6 long years, he was waiting for only one face. The streets taught Bruno many lessons. He learned to find food in unexpected places. He learned which corners gave shelter from the wind. He learned to avoid loud cars and angry people. But the most important lesson he carried was patience. Patience to wait for the day when destiny would bring him back to Amir. One cold night, Bruno lay on the steps of an old shop. His body was tired, but his ears still listened for a familiar call. He dreamed again of the boy's voice, soft and full of love. "Bruno, let's go home." The dream was so real that when he woke up, his eyes were wet. He lifted his head and looked around. The street was empty, but his heart whispered that the day of reunion would come. 6 years had passed since the day Bruno ran away in fear. 6 years of hunger, rain, cold, and loneliness. Yet the thread of love between him and Amir was never broken. It stretched across time, across streets, across silence. Bruno was no longer the playful puppy he once was, but he still carried the heart of loyalty. And while Bruno waited, the world quietly began to move him closer to the boy he loved. The story of their reunion was already being written by time. Neither the boy nor the dog knew it yet, but the day was coming when their paths would cross again. Bruno had now spent 6 long years away from Amir. His fur had grown duller, his steps had slowed, and his body showed the weight of time. Yet his heart remained the same. Deep inside, he was still the loyal dog who once ran across the grass to return a ball, still the same friend who slept beside Amir's bed. The streets had become his world. He knew which bakeries left crumbs behind, which alleys gave shelter from the rain, and which houses had kind faces at the door. Yet even with all this knowledge, Bruno carried an emptiness. Nothing in those streets could replace the voice of Amir calling his name, or the feeling of a boy's gentle hands patting his head. One evening, while walking near the edge of town, Bruno found a small group of stray dogs. They were gathered around a broken fence, sniffing the ground for food. For a while, Bruno joined them, but soon he moved away. The other dogs barked and fought for scraps, but Bruno was tired of fights. He preferred silence, the kind of silence in which memories could speak. As he walked away, he lifted his head toward the sky. The stars reminded him of the nights he used to watch them with Amir from the backyard. Though 6 years had passed, Bruno's sense of direction was still sharp. Sometimes, without knowing why, he found himself walking toward the old park where Amir had lost him. The park had changed. New swings stood where the old ones once were, and the grass was greener. Children laughed, and their voices filled the air. Bruno sat by the gate, watching. His eyes searched every face, hoping for the one he missed most. But Amir was never there. After a while, Bruno would lie down, his head resting on his paws. Destiny, however, had its own path. One afternoon, a young man named Salim noticed Bruno sitting outside the park. The dog looked weak, but his eyes shone with something different, something deeper. Salim bent down and said, "You look like you have a story." He placed a piece of bread near Bruno. Bruno sniffed it, wagged his tail gently, and ate. Salim watched for a while, then left. For days, Salim returned, always bringing food. Bruno accepted it, but never followed him home. He stayed near the park as if waiting for someone else. One day, Salim spoke to an old shopkeeper about Bruno. "This dog waits here every evening," Salim said. The shopkeeper nodded. "Yes, he has been around for many years. Always waiting, always watching. I think he lost someone long ago." These words touched Salim's heart. He began to wonder about Bruno's past. Meanwhile, in another part of the town, Amir was growing into a young man. He was no longer the 12-year-old boy who had lost his dog. He was now 18, taller, stronger, and with new responsibilities. But one thing had never changed. He still carried the memory of Bruno. On his desk lay an old picture of a small puppy with bright eyes. Amir often looked at that picture before leaving for school or work. Sometimes he whispered, "I miss you, Bruno." Amir's friends often told him to move on. "It has been 6 years," they said. "Dogs do not live forever. Maybe he found another home." Amir listened but never believed. In his heart he felt Bruno was still alive, still waiting. He often walked through the same streets he had searched years ago. He visited the park, stood by the gate, and looked around. But he never found his dog. One day Amir walked through the market to buy books. On the way he heard a man talking about a stray dog near the park. "That dog has been waiting for someone for years," the man said. "It never leaves. It is as if it is loyal to a ghost." Amir stopped and listened. His heart began to beat fast. A stray dog waiting at the park for years? Could it be Bruno? Amir asked where the dog could be found. The man pointed toward the old park at the edge of town. That evening, Amir walked there with careful steps. His eyes searched every corner. Then, near the gate, he saw a dog lying down. His fur rough, his body thin, but his eyes full of life. Amir's heart skipped a beat. The shape of the ears, the curve of the back, the way the tail rested, it all felt familiar. "Bruno?" Amir whispered, his voice trembling. The dog lifted his head slowly. His ears moved and his eyes looked at the young man. For a moment silence hung in the air. The world seemed to pause. The dog's eyes studied the face before him. Could this be the boy he once knew? The boy who had grown taller, older, but whose voice carried the same sound. Bruno stood on his tired legs and took a step closer. Amir's eyes filled with tears. "Bruno, it's me," he said softly. His voice shook with emotion. "It's Amir, I found you." But Bruno did not rush forward. He stood still, his body shaking. His tail did not wag like before. Instead, he looked at Amir with deep, searching eyes. The years apart had changed him. He remembered the boy, but time had placed a shadow between memory and reality. Amir dropped to his knees. "I never stopped looking for you," he whispered. "I never forgot." His hands trembled as he reached out. Bruno sniffed the air, inching closer, his nose catching a scent that pulled on his heart. It was familiar. It was home, yet Bruno hesitated. The years on the streets had taught him caution. People had shouted at him, chased him, and thrown stones. Trust was no longer simple. He wanted to run into Amir's arms, but a part of him held back. He tilted his head, confused, torn between love and fear. Amir's tears fell onto the ground. "Please, Bruno, come back to me." His voice broke, carrying 6 years of longing. Bruno's heart recognized the sound, but his mind fought with doubt. The boy he had known was no longer a boy. Could this truly be the same friend who once promised never to leave? The moment hung heavy, filled with questions and silence. The park, the gate, the children's laughter all faded into the background. Only two souls stood there, bound by a thread of memory and love. Bruno took another step closer, his nose brushing against Amir's hand. Amir froze, afraid to move too fast. The dog sniffed again, and for the first time in years a spark lit in his tired eyes. His body trembled, his heart beat faster. The scent was real. The voice was real. It was him. Yet even as recognition returned, the years of pain and loss weighed heavily. Bruno's reaction was not the joyful leap Amir had dreamed of. Instead, it was slow, careful, heartbreaking. The reunion had begun, but the wound of separation was not yet healed. And so the story moved to its next chapter, where love and sorrow would meet, and the true test of loyalty would unfold. Amir's knees touched the ground as he stayed still in front of Bruno. His hands were open, his voice gentle, and his eyes filled with tears. He did not want to scare the dog. He only wanted Bruno to feel safe, to know that the long wait was finally over. Bruno sniffed Amir's hand again. The scent was old but familiar. He remembered nights sleeping near that smell, days running under the sun with that voice calling him. His tail moved a little, just a small wag, weak but full of meaning. Amir noticed it and his heart raced. "It is you," Amir whispered softly. "It really is you, Bruno." His voice shook with emotion. The dog took another step forward but then stopped. The world of streets had taught him not to trust quickly. For years people had thrown stones or chased him away. His heart wanted to jump into Amir's arms, but his mind whispered caution. Amir understood the hesitation. He spoke slowly, with patience. I missed you every day. I prayed for you every night. I never forgot you." His words carried truth. Bruno's ears twitched. His eyes looked deep into Amir's, searching for the boy he once knew. The boy had changed. Amir was taller, his face older, but the kindness in his eyes had not changed. Bruno lowered his head, moved closer, and let his nose touch Amir's fingers. Amir did not move, he only cried quietly, letting his tears fall. Minutes passed like hours. Slowly, Bruno allowed Amir to stroke his head. The touch was gentle, not rushed, filled with care. At that moment, Bruno's eyes softened. A small sound escaped his throat, not a full bark, but a soft whine. Amir hugged him carefully, wrapping his arms around the dog's thin body. "You came back," Amir whispered. "I found you at last." People in the park stopped and stared. Some smiled, some shook their heads, but all could see the love between the boy and the dog. Children whispered, "Look, the dog knows him." An old man at the bench wiped his eyes and said, "This is loyalty." Bruno leaned against Amir, but his body trembled. The years of pain and hunger had left marks not only on his body but also on his heart. Amir felt the bones under Bruno's fur. He felt the weakness in his legs. He kissed the top of his head and said, "You will not suffer anymore. I will take you home." With slow steps, Amir stood up. Bruno followed, though his legs shook. Amir walked carefully, letting the dog move at his own pace. Together they left the park. For Bruno, every step was heavy but full of hope. He looked around, unsure, but his eyes stayed fixed on Amir. Something inside told him that the waiting was finally ending. When they reached Amir's home, the gate stood open, just as it had 6 years ago. Bruno stopped at the entrance. His eyes scanned the small house, the walls, the garden. Memories flooded back. This was the place where he had once played with a ball, where he had once slept under the window. His tail moved again, slow but steady. Amir's father came outside. His eyes widened as he saw the dog. "Is that—" he began, his voice breaking. Amir nodded. "Yes, it is, Bruno." For a moment, silence filled the air. The father bent down, calling softly, "Bruno." The dog tilted his head. The voice was familiar too. Slowly, he stepped inside the gate. Amir's mother came next, her eyes full of disbelief. She touched her mouth with her hands. "After all these years," she whispered. Tears rolled down her face. Bruno looked at her, and though he was weak, he wagged his tail faster. He remembered her gentle hands giving him food long ago. The family gathered around him. Bruno stood in the middle, looking from one face to another. His heart slowly opened. The fear began to fade. These were not strangers. These were the people he had loved as a puppy. That night, Amir placed a soft blanket near his bed. He gave Bruno warm food and fresh water. The dog ate slowly, carefully, as if still unsure that it was real. After eating, he lay down on the blanket. Amir sat beside him, touching his head gently. "You are safe now," he whispered. Bruno closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he slept without fear. But even as Amir smiled, his heart felt heavy. Bruno was not the same as before. His body was weaker, his fur was rough, and his energy was low. The streets had stolen much from him. Amir stroked his back and thought, "I lost 6 years with you. How do I bring them back?" The following days were filled with care. Amir bathed Bruno with warm water, brushed his fur, and fed him healthy food. He took him to a kind doctor who checked his body. The doctor said, "This dog has suffered much, but his heart is strong. With love and care, he can still live peacefully." Amir nodded, determined to give his dog the best days possible. "He is my family," Amir said. "I will never let him go again." The doctor smiled, touched by the bond he saw. Every morning, Bruno followed Amir slowly to the garden. He sat under the sun, closing his eyes, letting the warmth touch his fur. Sometimes Amir sat beside him reading a book, sometimes just talking. "Do you remember our games?" Amir would ask with a smile. Bruno's ears would move and his eyes would shine. Even if words could not answer, the connection between them spoke louder than language. Yet Amir could not ignore the truth. Bruno was no longer young. His steps were slow, his breaths heavier. At night, Amir often stayed awake, watching him sleep, listening to his breathing. He feared losing him again, but this time not to the streets, this time to time itself. Still, Amir promised himself one thing. He would fill every moment with love. If Bruno's days were fewer now, each day would be brighter, warmer, and filled with care. No regret would remain. The town soon learned of the reunion. Neighbors came to see Bruno. Children whispered, "This is the dog who waited for 6 years." Some even cried when they saw how loyal the dog had been. Amir felt proud, but more than that, he felt grateful. Grateful that destiny had given him one more chance, but fate is never simple. As weeks passed, Bruno's health wavered. Some days he walked with strength, wagging his tail, following Amir everywhere. Other days he lay down quietly, tired and weak. Amir noticed every small change, and each change broke his heart a little more. One evening, as the sun set in golden light, Amir sat with Bruno in the garden. He held the ball they once played with. "Do you remember this?" Amir whispered. Bruno lifted his head, looked at the ball, and then at Amir, his eyes filled with a soft glow. Slowly, with great effort, he stood and took a step toward Amir. Amir threw the ball gently, only a few feet away. Bruno walked, picked it up, and brought it back. His steps were slow, but his tail wagged. Tears filled Amir's eyes. "You still remember," he whispered. He hugged Bruno close. The dog leaned against him, tired but happy. It was a simple moment, yet it carried years of love, loss, and reunion. Amir held his dog, feeling both joy and sorrow. The reunion was real, but it was also fragile. The bond was strong, but time was stronger. And so the story moved toward its final part, where love would face its last test, and the heart would carry both the pain of loss and the gift of loyalty. The weeks turned into months after Bruno returned home. Each day felt like a blessing to Amir. He woke up every morning with joy, knowing his best friend was finally by his side again. He brushed Bruno's fur, fed him warm meals, and sat with him under the sun. Their life was not like before, full of running and endless games, but it was full of love, peace, and quiet moments that mattered more than anything. Bruno, though weak, showed his loyalty every day. Wherever Amir went inside the house, the dog followed slowly. When Amir sat to study, Bruno lay at his feet. When Amir went outside, Bruno waited at the door until he returned. Even in silence, Bruno's presence filled Amir's heart. The bond that had once been broken was whole again, though it carried the weight of time. But Amir could not hide from the truth. Bruno was no longer young. His body had suffered years of cold nights and hungry days. The doctor had warned Amir gently, saying, "Your dog has lived a hard life. Care for him with love, for his days may not be long." Those words stayed in Amir's mind, pressing on his heart like a shadow. One evening, Amir sat in the garden with Bruno resting beside him. The sky was painted with orange and pink colors. Amir whispered, "I wish I had never lost you. I wish those 6 years never happened." Bruno opened his eyes slowly and looked at Amir. His tail moved once as if to say that the past no longer mattered. What mattered was now. As the nights grew colder, Bruno's steps grew slower. He struggled to climb small stairs and sometimes lay down more than he walked. Amir stayed close, giving him comfort. He wrapped him in blankets, carried him when needed, and fed him gently. Each small act of care was Amir's way of saying thank you, for waiting, for surviving, for loving even after so many years. One night, Bruno lay near Amir's bed as usual. The room was quiet. Amir was half asleep when he felt Bruno's nose touch his hand. He opened his eyes and saw the dog staring at him with deep, soft eyes. They were not the eyes of fear or confusion anymore. They were full of peace. Bruno rested his head back down and Amir whispered, "I love you, Bruno." The next morning, Amir noticed that Bruno was weaker than usual. He did not eat much and he walked only a few steps before lying down again. Amir stayed beside him, stroking his fur. His heart felt heavy. He did not want to believe what was happening, but deep inside he knew. The day passed slowly. In the evening, Amir brought out the old ball, the same one they had played with when Bruno was a puppy. He placed it on the ground near him. Bruno lifted his head, looked at the ball, and then looked at Amir. For a moment his eyes shone brightly like the eyes of the young dog he once was. With effort he pushed himself up, took a few shaky steps, and touched the ball with his nose. His tail wagged weakly. Amir's tears fell as he whispered, "You remember?" Bruno lay down again, tired but calm. Amir sat beside him through the night, refusing to leave his side. He held Bruno close, spoke softly to him, and remembered all the days they had shared, the mornings in the garden, the games in the park, the nights when Bruno slept by his bed. When the first light of dawn entered the room, Bruno lifted his head one last time. His eyes met Amir's. They spoke without words. They spoke of love, of loyalty, of a friendship that had survived distance and time. Amir held him gently, whispering, "It's okay, Bruno, you can rest now." Bruno gave a soft sigh, placed his head on Amir's arm, and closed his eyes. His body became still, but his face looked peaceful. The loyal dog who had waited for 6 years had given his last breath in the arms of the boy he loved. Amir cried as he held him. His tears fell onto Bruno's fur and his heart broke. He had found his best friend again, only to lose him once more. But this time it was different. Bruno had not been lost. He had been home, loved and safe. That was all that mattered. The family gathered around. Amir's father placed a hand on his son's shoulder and said softly, "Bruno waited for you. He waited until he could see you again. That is the meaning of loyalty." Amir nodded, though his tears did not stop. He knew his father was right. Bruno's final gift was not only his return, but the lesson of love that never ends. They buried Bruno in the garden under the shade of a tree. Amir placed the old ball beside him. "So you can play whenever you want," Amir whispered. He stood there for a long time, remembering everything. His heart hurt, but it was also full of gratitude. In the weeks that followed, Amir often sat near the grave, speaking softly as if Bruno could still hear him. "You were my best friend. You always will be." He carried Bruno's memory everywhere he went. When he walked through the park, he remembered the dog waiting at the gate. When he looked at the stars, he remembered nights of shared silence. When he saw another dog wagging its tail, he smiled, thinking of Bruno's wag that never failed to bring him joy. Amir learned that true love never dies. Time, distance, even loss cannot erase it. Bruno's body was gone, but his spirit remained in every corner of Amir's life. The dog had shown him what loyalty meant, what patience meant, and what it meant to wait for someone with all your heart. Years later, when Amir was older, he would often tell the story of Bruno to others. He spoke not with sadness but with pride. "He was lost for 6 years, Amir would say. But he never forgot me and I never forgot him. We found each other again, even if only for a short time. His reaction broke my heart, but it also healed me. It showed me that love is stronger than time." The listeners often grew quiet, touched by the story. Some wiped their eyes. Others nodded, understanding the lesson. And Amir always ended by saying, "If you love someone, never give up on them. Love will always find its way." In the garden, the tree above Bruno's resting place grew taller and stronger each year. Its branches stretched wide, giving shade and comfort. Amir often sat under it, feeling close to his dog. The ball remained buried there, a symbol of the bond they shared. The story of Bruno and Amir was not just about loss. It was about reunion, loyalty, and the truth that even a heart broken by time can still shine with love. Bruno had waited, Bruno had returned, and Bruno had given his last breath in the arms of the boy he never stopped loving. That was the final gift, the most loyal gift of all.